Alright guys, let's go over the first the 7-foot rods, both the E-glass and the composite. We have a 7-foot medium heavy, 10 to 15. This is our 705 CB medium H. This is a composite rod. The E-glass series this is a 7 MB medium heavy rod. It's rated also for 10 to 15 or 12 to 20 on that one. And then we have our lighter series, which is the medium heavy, and that's a 70 MA. Each one of them serves a purpose. And guys always ask me, what rods do you guys use for cranking? And the best advice I can give anybody, I'll go back to my mechanic analogy. If I go to a mechanic store to get my truck fixed or shop, and I see a guy that has a set of crescent wrenches there, I'm going to turn around and leave. You cannot rebuild a motor or fix a car with a crescent wrench. You might hear, well, I like using crescent wrenches. That's not the tool for the job. Personal preference is set aside from what you should be using as a tool to get the job done right. So some guys will say, I like a 6'9" rod for worming, and I don't understand. There's no logical reason behind it. The tool doesn't fit the application. Okay, so when we made these rods, the difference between a 7-foot medium and a 7-foot medium heavy that's composite are in the baits and the situations, water temperatures, the line, the cover that you're fishing. For instance, the 7-foot medium rod, if you're throwing a 10 or 12 pound line on a 1.5 and you're going down a little riprap, 9 out of 10 times you're going to keep the boat up against a riprap. So that's why we're using the shorter rods. And that's the only example I give you at the moment on this rod. If you're up by the boat and you're making parallel throws, you got a 7-foot rod and you got rocks that are right there. You can't have a 7.5-foot rod or an 8-foot rod. If you're making overhand throws, you're not making accurate throws. If you're left-handed, you might be able to do that. But if you're right-handed, more than likely the cover's going to be to your right, so you can just make short roll throws or roll casts to the bait. When you're using this rod, you're going to be using 10, 12 pound line on clean rock if you're going down a riprap. But if you're going down a riprap that has brush, or as Guntersville, for instance, has hydrilla, I'm going to be using a rod that I can put 20 or 25 pound line on. Generally, when you're throwing a 1.5 down a riprap, it's during the winter months. So it's either a pre-spawn or a winter pattern. The fish will move up on those rocks to get warm. And so, again, the hooks on a 1.5, right, like this SOB, you got a lot stronger hooks that you got to penetrate the fish's mouth with than you say, for instance, a little 3 would, right? So you got a lot thinner hooks here. Obviously the 12 pound can handle the job, but if you got brush, wood, or hydrilla along the same riprap or rocks that you're fishing, you're going to want 20 pound line. When the fish hits the bait, the cold water's made their mouth hard, so it's harder to get that hook to penetrate. You're going to need a lot stiffer rod, but at the same side you need a slow rod that can actually let the fish eat the bait. That's something that guys have forgotten. The biggest mistake I see in crankbait fishing is not matching the water temperature, the crankbait, and the reaction of the fish to that situation. They usually mismatch something. They're either using too light a line, too heavy a line for the crankbait, too fast of a rod for that particular crankbait, or water temperature. The E-glass is going to be a lot more forgiving for you. That's the one I would use personally if I'm throwing a chatterbait, something like this, same situation around riprap with brush, or if I'm fishing very isolated cover and I can get away with a heavy line for a reaction strike, I'm going to throw this medium heavy with 17 or 20 gamma on there that I can horse the fish. I can actually drive the hook into their mouth. They get hard. Remember, in the winter months, most of the time the fish that we're fishing for and around are feeding on crawfish, so their mouth is already hard from feeding on that. The water temperature also makes the inside of their mouth a lot harder, and that's something a lot of guys don't think about. So summertime, you catch fish and they got mush mouth, what I call mush mouth. You'll set the hook and you'll see an inch or an inch and a half line basically where the hook went in and then it pulled. That's mush mouth. You don't see that in the winter very often. A lot of times in the winter you also get fish that'll hit that 1.5 or 2.5, and you'll get them one inside the mouth and one around the side of the head where they just slashed at it as a reaction strike. You want to be able to drive them and horse them to the boat. So my recommendations for these particular rods is 7-foot medium, smaller crankbaits, a 1.5, a series 3, maybe something like this little Spro, Little John, or the SOB, square bill like that you're going to throw. Small chatterbaits, 1/4 ounce, 1/8 ounce, 3/16, something like that. If I'm going to a medium heavy, it's going to be because I'm using 15, 17, 20 pound line. I'm not going to fool around Same size baits, just different situation, right? Clean cover, I can get away with a medium. It's a slower bait, it's a slower presentation. If I can get away with a medium heavy, of course, we all want to be able to get to fish the boats because we can, which is the point. And then, when do you use one that's composite? Well, if I'm not fishing in super cold water, say springtime, and I'm pitching the cover, meaning I can take my crankbait and pitch to it, and the fish are eating it, and they're eating it really, really good. I don't really need to have such a slow rod. I'm going to use a little faster rod. That's my personal preference. When the water's a little warmer than when it's colder. When it's colder, I like the more composite rod. When it's warmer, I like the faster type, the glass rod, and when it's warmer, I like the composite rod. Again, guys, if you haven't ordered your rods, you can go find them at enigmafishing.com or your dealer here in about 30 days. Thank you.